Thank you for joining us. The Columbian Editorial Board is pleased to welcome Sue Marshall, candidate for County Council, Position 5, or District 5. I should mention this is the seat currently held by Richard Rylander, who sought re-election, did not advance to the general election. I'm Greg Jane, the editorial page editor at the Columbian. I will let the other editorial board members introduce themselves. Ben?
Ben Campbell, publisher at the Columbian.
I'm Craig Brown. I'm the editor of the Columbian.
Hi. Hi. I'm Colleen Keller. I'm assistant news editor of the Columbian.
Great.
So, great. Let's see. As mentioned before, we are recording this. We will post it unedited on our website and our YouTube channel for the benefit of the community. Let's see, I'm looking at my notes. If only the final note is that Don Benton is the other candidate in this race. He declined our invitation to meet with us, so we are pleased to have you for a solo interview. And we'll get started. So Sue, why don't you take just 1 to 2 minutes, introduce yourself, explain why you are running, and then we'll get to some specific policy questions.
Great, that sounds good. So thank you very much for inviting me. I missed you in the primary, but I'm very happy to be here now. I grew up in Renton, Washington. And went to college in Bellingham, went to Western University. I got a degree in environmental health with a minor in biology, so science background for me. I was the first kid in my extended family to complete college. And following college, I moved down to Clark County with my college sweetheart. We stayed here for a little bit, and then I got work in Clackamas County, so we moved to Oregon, and that's where we married and raised a family and had our careers. So I have 3 kids. We have 3 kids, and they're all adults now. One still is living in the area in Battleground, former teacher. He's now working for the state ESD training science educators. So they're all accomplished in their respective fields. My career has been in public service, so I have about 40 decades of working at various levels in community service. I worked for community action agencies on local hunger issues. I led the statewide effort to adopt a school breakfast program. That was in the mid-'80s. Following that, I worked for a nonprofit organization, environmental organization, primarily working on water quality issues, environmental restoration, and actually recreation opportunities. I then went to work for the state legislature, and I was a committee administrator for a couple of policy committees, the Senate Environment and Natural Resources Committee, and then also the House Ocean Policy and Emergency Preparedness. I think it was the leftover topics that they put together. And then I started my own consulting firm, and I did that for a number of years. And then on retirement, my husband and I decided we wanted to have a really active working retirement. So we moved out to our family farm 7 years ago, and then have really gone all in. And we saw an opportunity to really demonstrate the value of local agriculture in Clark County. So we planted 27 acres of hazelnuts, and we're having our first harvest maybe in a week or so. We've been counting the jays that are having a little premature harvest of their own. So that's my background. And since moving out to Clark County, I've been very active at the county level with county commission decisions, largely around land use. I've also served as Clark Clean Water Commission. I served on that for 3 years, and then I'm in my second term as an elected nonpartisan Board of Supervisors member for the Clark Conservation District. So I'm still doing that. And I felt compelled to run. I felt confident in my skill set. I understand government, and I think I can do a very good job in the role. I felt that I had a personal stake because we have been farming for over 60 years in Clark County. We have deep roots here and concerned about encroaching development onto agricultural land. And I wasn't confident as I looked at who I might be running against. I wasn't confident that they would be representing, I felt, the needs for District 5. And then finally, as fate would have it, I wound up in District 5. I didn't know till the week before the deadline for filing if I was in District 2 or District 5. So I was very happy to land in District 5 because I think I can best represent this rural district.
Great. Well, thank you. And that leads us to our first question. I'll let Craig ask that.
Sure. So we were talking, Greg and I were talking a little bit before the meeting about how tough it is to balance the need for more land for housing in a county that's short of affordable housing versus trying to preserve land for farming and open space. How should the county tackle that, and how would you help lead that process?
Great question. I think the issue often gets framed for affordable housing as the need for more land, and absolutely, you need to have land to build on, and we need to build more affordable housing. But just having more land does not guarantee that the housing is affordable. Just down the street from me on 179th, they lifted the urban holding area in 2,200 acres of land. And ultimately, I think with build out on residential, there'll be about 4,000 new homes. And the starting price for the homes just on 11th and 179th is about 550,000. So they're not affordable. They're not affordable homes. So to have affordable homes, I think there's a combination of things that need to happen. The county did a very good job. I'll compliment the county on putting together a committee to look into housing options and an action plan, which was adopted. And the Planning Commission is starting to step by step begin to implement some of those things. It means some regulatory changes that reduce barriers. Ultimately, there's going to be a need for funding, but I see it's a combination of funding, regulation, and incentives to get builders to really invest in affordable housing. I think there's good examples in other communities. And I think as beginning to implement that plan that was developed, it wasn't for the entire county. It was just for, I say just, it's a huge area, the unincorporated urban area in Clark County, which is about the same size as the city of Vancouver. So that would be a really, really good and important step to take. The devil will be in the details. There'll be a lot of negotiating that will have to occur. But I think we're off to a good start. It's good to at least, to have anything happen, you have to start with a plan. So we got the basis of a good plan. Oh, and then as far as balancing land, there's also a good opportunity with the update of the comprehensive plan that's due, I think, in 2025, to look at the whole landscape of the county. And, it's not just housing that we need to set aside land for, and agriculture and forest. There's also a need to identify industrial land. When I looked at, in particular, this urban holding area, and there's so much talk about the Discovery Corridor, I-5 going up to Woodland. When I looked at that, I was really, surprised. There was very little land set aside for jobs, and so I think we really need balance all of those things as we go forward. And in order to do that effectively, we have to engage the whole community. I think there's been concern that there's been some segments of the community, the building industry, maybe for one, that it's a very, they have a very powerful lobby, and that things have not everybody's had a chance to weigh in effectively on the comprehensive plan. So there's some opportunities. But, with land use, you can't turn around without there being a conflict. So it's just negotiating your way through that and listening to all sides.
Do you think that the building industry has had too much influence over the process?
Well, I would say just looking at the vacant buildable land process, that was off to, I think, a good start. There was a good consultant hired, and they pulled together, I think, a balanced group of people to weigh in on that. I didn't participate in that directly. I watched the council hearings, but I think it was right after the November election when the committee still had a few more meetings to do, but the makeup of the council changed. And I think the building industry saw that there was an opportunity to push for a lot more than they felt like they were getting in terms of that vacant buildable land process. So I'd say, yeah, they've had more influence than the farmers have.
Does all of this threaten the rural nature of the outlying areas in the county, or is that kind of inevitable with population growth?
I think some is inevitable. But I do feel like, when I talk to people, even in the most recently developed areas, people are concerned about the rapid growth and the changing landscape. And, they value having nearby farms, the wineries. All of these things are, I think, valuable amenities. And I think a healthy rural landscape is part of an overall economic strategy, because businesses will want to move here, people want to move here, employees will want to move here because this is a beautiful place to live. And so we need to be cautious about undermining that. And I know among the farming community, it's very difficult to access land, and there's been a steady loss of agricultural land. And again, the lifting of the urban holding, I talked to a number of people who live in that area, some who had just purchased maybe 5 acres or 10 acres, plan to start businesses, and just when the things were changing. And so now they are feeling threatened.
What specifically? Oh, I'm sorry. I did.
No, go ahead.
I would like to hear like a couple of specific things that could be done to benefit agriculture in the county. What some of these folks who have small farms and want to bolster that as a truly going concern, since local food is also an issue people are concerned about. What can the county do to help that?
Well, I think it can be approached in 2 avenues. There's, the agricultural land base, which is important, and to have a diversity of sizes of agriculture. For us as hazelnut growers, we couldn't do that feasibly if we had just 5 acres or even 10 acres. You need to have more acreage to make that economically viable. So I think having being sure there's a variety of sizes of lands for different kinds of farming. And then you need to support the farmers themselves, and there's a whole suite of things that could occur. And one thing I think has been successful in the county, I think in the Clark County, we were the first to have consumer-supported agriculture, CSAs, where farmers, and you don't need a lot of acres to do this. You just have to work very hard at it, though. Growers grow an array of vegetables, and then they can deliver a weekly box of produce to to their customers, and people sign up and pay up front, which is helpful for a farmer to be able to then throughout the growing season receive these boxes of a cornucopia really of food. The extension service plays an important role. There's a whole infrastructure that supports farming. The technical assistance that's provided for us, a lot of the technical assistance that we rely on for the hazelnuts is in Oregon with OSU and the processors down there. So when we picked hazelnuts, it was because we could get a pretty good price for them. It was pretty steady. And there was that technical assistance and processors nearby, near enough that this would work for us. And then, the having, we have several John Deeres, but we initially, when we started farming out here, we got a David Brown tractor because just at I-5 and 179th, there was a David Brown dealership there. So it's not there anymore, but it would have been convenient. And then processing, the berry growers, there's a lot of berry growers in Clark County, and they actually have to aggregate their product and take it down to Oregon where it gets processed. So having local processing would be very helpful. And recently someone was telling me, meat processing, organic beef, chickens, things like that, those kinds of facilities would be really helpful too. So I think there's collectively, there could be grant programs to apply for. Also, I don't think many people are aware of this, but legacy lands dollars can actually go to protect farmland through conservation easements. And there's a number of farmers that would be happy to participate in that, but it's really lagged in really setting up the mechanism to make that happen. And that would be where a farmer could get paid for the development value, but then the land stays in agricultural use in perpetuity. So it's kind of a win-win. So there's a whole suite of things that could happen. Some years ago, I think it was 2009, the county pulled together a group and they developed a really good report on protecting agriculture in Clark County. So that would be a good thing. I have told people, let's just dust that off and start implementing some of those things that were recommended. It's just fallen by the wayside.
Okay, great. Thank you. Do you guys have any other questions about land use or farming? Craig, Colleen, okay, let's move on. One of the primary issues in the area is homelessness, and the county is designated as the lead agency to deal with homelessness in the area. Do you think the county has done that effectively, or what steps would you advocate?
The county, as I understand it, is largely passes through funds to a number of nonprofits. So I haven't really analyzed who all of those nonprofits are and how well they are doing. But I do think, just in reading from your newspaper, some of the reports, the point in time census that was done, that there have been some good strides in increasing the number of beds available so people can have some immediate shelter. More needs to be done in that vein. It's a complicated issue because there's multiple problems that are going on. One is just economic, and people can't afford their rent, or I know you just had an article about eviction, and I think affordable housing is an issue that goes right alongside homelessness, because I think a number of people are very, very vulnerable because they can't afford their rent or their house payments, and if over 50% of your income is going for shelter, you're in a very vulnerable position. So I think the homelessness issue has to be coupled with affordable housing, and we have to aggressively go deal with both. you know, as I've been talking to people, people have said, "Oh, San Diego is doing a great job." And so I was looking at some of their programs and the budget, and their budget was 69 million. So funding, maybe we need to increase funding, but I think coordinating, the county is in a good position to coordinate those efforts and really put together a comprehensive plan that would include drug treatment, really tailor it to the multiple needs that people have when they're in that situation. And there needs to be a progressive support to get people into housing. It's not just simply, oh, here's the key, you can just move in. There's additional support that people need to stabilize their situation. So I think it may be, I'm sure there's a need for additional resources and coordinating amongst the multiple players that are addressing this. And I would say I really, really commend the nonprofits that have stepped up to address these issues, because I think they are doing their level best to respond to the situation.
Speaking about it, maybe a need for more funding, would you, this year, would you support the county taking the permissible 1% tax levy increase, property tax levy increase?
Well, it's good to make that decision in the context of looking at the entire budget, but just in looking at, I was looking at just the general fund and the projected structural deficit. And just in those broad terms, I would say, yes, we need more money because we have this structural deficit. And, you know, we were lucky, we got more sales tax revenue than we anticipated because we were able to capture the sales tax from online shopping, which, you know, has skyrocketed. And then the COVID money, I think, has helped us out a great deal as well. But for our fiscal stability, we need to look at really more regularly taking that 1% and beginning to get ourselves out of this structural deficit situation. Because as you look ahead a few years, you know, it's less and less money would go into any kind of reserve, and that puts us in a very vulnerable position. And then you just simply start running into a deficit in your general budget. And then coupled with that is our bond rating. All of this can tie into our bond rating too. And if your bond rating starts slipping, you're in a bad way. So probably yes is what my answer would be.
You know, Sue, it's normally not, we don't find a lot of politicians who admit that raising taxes can be a good idea. How do you sell that to the public?
Well, you know what a lot of people will admit is that there's not enough deputies. I'm not getting my permits quick enough. I call the county and they don't respond to me. I think there's a lot of people, most people would agree with all of those things. And, you know, overall, you know, it's not just the deputies and the sheriff's department. It's really all of county government. I think there's like a 15% vacancy of county employees. So I think we need to let folks know the connection there. I don't think we can willy-nilly raise taxes, but I think we have to do it in a very transparent way that explains how the money translates into government services, because it absolutely does. And then if we can find that tax that somebody else pays.
That's easy to sell to the public. Let's see, what were you mentioned you weren't sure, you didn't know until the last minute what district you were going to be in. What were your thoughts about the process? Maybe not the final outcome, but what did you think of the process of redistricting?
Well, I didn't follow the redistricting committee itself. I watched the council hearings, and read the newspaper accounts of it. And boy, it just seems like it was a mess. It didn't really inspire confidence from the get-go. From the get-go, when they were establishing who was going to serve on that committee, and then the whole series of votes where nothing really got adopted, and also, it was, I don't know. It was just a messy process. I don't think the public, and it's damaging when you go through such a public, messy process. It undermines the public's confidence in government, and that's really more of damaging than just the degree of gerrymandering you do to a particular map. So I watched all of that, and I was, anxious because I didn't really start thinking seriously that I might run until April. So then I started watching much more closely. But I have to say, even if the final map was one that people thought was, I guess it was more arranged that would accommodate some existing council members. It put me in the 5th district, and I tell people that's the silver lining here.
And why is that? Why do you think that benefits you?
Because it put me in the 5th district, and because of my farming background and the work that I've done working in a number of these communities, just as I looked at, Yacolt and Brush Prairie and La Center and all of these communities, these are communities that I know people. I feel like I'm a trusted individual. And I just saw that there would be a pathway to be successful. And I do feel that I'm the best of the candidates to really represent this rural district, being a land manager myself. And I think that will be an important perspective to have on the council, especially going into comprehensive planning.
Sue, I've got a question about the sheriff's office. It seems like there's a lot of talk right now about how the sheriff needs more money to hire and retain deputies. They need more money to implement a body-worn camera program. They need more money to fix an outdated and overcrowded Clark County jail. What is your view on this, and what can be done to support the sheriff's office?
Well, I was heartened that Measure 11 for the body cams and dash cams, what did that get? About 60% of the vote. I think that was a very positive thing. I think that the Sheriff's Department and the Deputies Guild, and really others in the community did an effective job in communicating the need for that. And I think it also reflected that people felt that need. So I think that bodes well for finding funding in the future. Now, I haven't toured the jail, but from all of the accounts I've heard, and I've listened to the council talk about they have a 10-year plan to incrementally make improvements to improve safety and various things. So, it may be we need a new jail, but the price tag will be, I'm sure, significant. But at the same time, I don't know if staying in our very fiscal conservative mode to incrementally improve things, that still may leave us liable if there are just really unsafe conditions. So there's a lot more I would need to dig in there, but I am aware that it's a big and potentially very costly problem that really needs to be addressed. And as far as the deputies and staffing and funding, again, I think the Measure 11 was helpful, can help somewhat there. As I've been going around, it's the county, but it's also the small cities in District 5 that need resources. So Ridgefield may be in pretty good shape. They've got a couple of deputies themselves. I'm not as familiar with Battleground. The center needs some help, and they all interact, because whoever is is the closest and can respond, there's an obligation to respond. So if the county is not able to send someone out to Amboy or something, or Battleground deputies need to pick that up. It's all intertwined. So we got to make sure that the whole system is working to best serve the rural community, because I think they're in many ways very vulnerable. So you need money. You need to coordinate your efforts so you're not, wasting money, and make sure the whole system works, because there's intergovernmental approaches to this.
The council this year, they considered a mini initiative that would have prohibited mask mandates and vaccine mandates in the county. How would you have voted on that? What were your thoughts on that?
Well, I was very concerned about that. Just, we have a farm. People come to our farm for U-Pick, and we have a farm stand. And during, not this year, but in the past 2 years, we required people to wear masks. And as I understand that mini initiative, if we were requiring people to wear masks, then we would have been in trouble. So I think it went way too far, and it ultimately it was was in violation of state law. So it seems to me that mini initiative advanced further than it should have, and it got the whole community in an uproar because of that. But I believe that there needs to be is this any mini initiative, constitutional or not constitutional? There needs to be some checks along the way. So radical things, and I think this wasn't a radical approach, don't advance so far. So I would have hoped that I wouldn't have voted on it, because it wouldn't have gotten that far in the process.
Right. Any other questions?
So Sue, are you going to vote for Greg Kimsey? What's your view on whether the county's election system is fair and honest?
I think Greg Kimsey has really done a very good job. He's also running in a nonpartisan position, so I feel comfortable supporting him. And I think that the county has run fair elections. A concern of mine with my opponent actually is that he seems to be promoting this notion that elections aren't fair, or that we should question our elections, and promoting events where national figures are coming in to promote that, what seems to me to be a conspiracy theory. So yeah, it's a concern to have that out there, when in fact just the opposite, it seems to me, is the case.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Let's see, even though the county council doesn't actually play a great role where replacement of the Interstate 5 bridge is concerned, it always does seem to get dragged into it. What is your position on the bridge project that is now moving forward?
That's a question I figured would be asked. I support replacement of the I-5 bridge. I think, I've heard the mayor of Vancouver describe where we're at with the I-5 bridge as step 3 in a 100-step process. So we got a lot of steps left to go. And I would be cautious about being too strident about some aspects of it. I think the process needs to move along a little bit further. They've got a preferred alternative, and now the process is, let's examine that preferred alternative and see what actually is, I think, physically possible and financially possible. Nobody likes tolling. I can understand people's resistance to tolling, but right now the financial plan is that tolling will make up a third of that. Now, if we don't do tolling, then we need to find a third, which I think maybe that's about a couple billion. We need to find that couple billion somewhere. So if the feds are doing 2 billion, each of the states are doing $1 billion, and Oregon hasn't committed to their $1 billion yet. So that's a uncertainty. And then the feds provide a couple billion. So I don't know. There'd have to be some alternative plan to figure out where to get that 2 billion if it's not tolling. Ultimately, if we can get more good paying jobs, and everybody says this, I know, in Clark County, and people don't have to travel across the bridge, that would be a much more ideal situation. And I'm heartened, like we can thank Senator Cantwell for helping with the silicon wafer expansion. So that'll benefit Clark County. But I do support replacing the bridge. I think it's a vital transportation link, and it needs to be safe. What was the other? Oh, the other aspect of it that people raise is the light rail. So, I support the bus rapid transit. That's going to be a component of it. Again, I think one of the questions is whether or not the light rail is, depending on the configuration of the bridge, how steep it is, whether or not light rail can they can engineer it. The city of Vancouver wants light rail. If it stops in the city of Vancouver, if no one in the county is paying for the light rail, then, why not let Vancouver have their light rail? And I bet a lot of people in the county would use it. So I think we're still, a lot is left to figure out related to the bridge. And, the other aspect I think about also is that with COVID, there's so many more people who are not commuting or commuting a lot less because they're able to work at home. And I don't know if that has been factored into it, or what our future needs will be related to moving back and forth across the bridge in terms of individuals. Maybe it's not 70,000 now that are commuting. Maybe it's maybe we can shave some of that off with some economic development on this side, and there's just so much uncertainty really with the future. So I don't know. There's a long and convoluted answer for you.
Well, that's okay. I'm curious. So, as Colleen mentioned, the county council doesn't have a lot of say regarding the bridge and the final configuration. But I'm curious, what do you hear from people in the 5th district, which is a more rural part of the county? What do you hear from them regarding the bridge? And would you feel compelled to support the position of your constituents if you were on the council?
Well, I sure would feel compelled to support the position of my constituents, but honestly, the bridge does not really come up. What comes up is, well, permitting, how difficult it is to get a permit, lack of enforcement in some areas, too much enforcement in other areas. And
what do you mean by enforcement? Like law enforcement?
Well, like the county enforcement. I'm thinking of some of the aggregate mining and conditional uses that have been applied, and some communities have been struggling for years with failure of the county to enforce some of these conditional uses. On the flip side, what I hear from some of the equine community is that they're getting over enforced, and that there's small operations that are just trying to board a few horses, and a lot more regulation is being applied to them, and it's just putting them out of business. So both things are happening. Too much enforcement, not enough enforcement. So there's things to look. So I hear that from people. And then there is a concern about just the rapid growth and development. And I'll just, a caveat is I've been spending a lot of time recently in Ridgefield going door to door. So, and Ridgefield has grown, quite a bit. Well, the center has too, but, so those are the kinds of concerns that I hear. And then also homelessness, I think, where there might not be visually a lot of homeless in District 5. It is a concern that people have, that be something, there's needs there that need to be taken care of. And then fund the roads, not I-5, but just really the roads that people travel around to go to the grocery store, the school, or wherever. People are concerned about those things. And, and then the schools as well, that the impacts of growth that has on the schools.
Great, thank you. Anything else? Great, then Sue, why don't you give us your final pitch for why voters should support you, and feel free to mention any notable endorsements that you like.
Oh, okay. Well, today I just heard the longshoremen endorse me, so I have the longshoremen, and the firefighters, local 452 has endorsed me. The State Farm Bureau PAC endorsed me, so I feel like I have support from a wide variety of organizations. The State Sierra Club has endorsed me. I spoke to the teachers, the State Teachers Union last week, so I haven't heard yet back from them. But I have a good cross-section, I think, of endorsements.
And I'm sorry, did you say the State Sierra Club?
Yes.
Okay, did they realize you are running against the county's former environmental services person?
You know what? I think they are very aware of that.
Okay, just checking. I'm sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
He was at the EPA for a while too.
So final pitch, I would just say that, I haven't run for office before. There were compelling reasons that I've talked about that propelled me to step up to run. My husband asked me, he said, well, has anyone said to you, oh, if you didn't run, I would have? I said, no one has said that to me. So a lot of people have thanked me for running. I think that there's great opportunity ahead. With the comprehensive plan and just so many things that need to be addressed, and I'm a problem solver. I'm not afraid to talk to people who may disagree with me fervently, because I think it's in finding the conflict that you begin to find where the resolution and common ground could be. So I'm a hard worker. I have the temperament, I think, to be a very good counselor. And I'm also very committed to public engagement and really assuring that people see what's going on with their government, know how it's going to affect their lives, and provide them with every opportunity to participate in those decisions and feel safe in doing so. So I guess that's I'm the rural gal for District 5.
Great. Well, Sue, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
This was great fun. Good to talk to you.
All right.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.